Hello, my friends, and welcome. Season 9 is here. We are week 7 of season 9. Welcome to the VML. We are sponsored by Wizard of the Coast and GLHF. Good luck. High five. My name is Nicole Callahan, also known as Lady of the Crease, and I am joined here once again. It's been a while, Miss Beky. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing so good, so excited to be here, to be back. I took a little bit of a break, just overwhelmed with life and stuff, but happy to be back on the original stomping ground of the VML and with the lovely Nicole and also with the lovely Emma.
Yes, Emma. Hello, special guest tonight. I am so happy to have you here. Why don't you introduce yourself to our lovely viewers?
Hi guys, I'm Emma. I'm so happy to be back. I think I've done guest casting for the VML like once, a really long time ago, but I'm always excited to join the team. Nicole and Beky are fantastic. And I'm Emmaskyeward on literally everything. I'm also playing in the VML this season. It's been a really fun and exciting season so far, so I'm excited to watch some games today.
Yes, super fun, super exciting season. 128 players is the field that we start with. It's 10 weeks long, 7 weeks of round robin play, followed by 3 weeks of playoffs. And this is the final week of round robin play. This is week number 7. So after this week, we will know who has made the playoffs. Our field of 128 is going to shrink down to a field of 32. And we are going to watch some win and ins tonight. Very exciting. Cannot wait to see. There's a lot of action backed up for this whole evening. Cannot wait. Very much looking forward to it. And if you are interested in joining the VML next season, make sure you're following VML MTG on Twitter. And make sure you're following us here on Twitch. We're here just about every Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I am glad you all could join us tonight. Again, thanks to our sponsors, Wizards of the Coast and GLHF. If you have not checked out Good Luck High Five, you must. Megan and Maria are phenomenal. So give them a follow on Twitter as well. And now I'm ready to get into some action. Why don't we take a look at our metagame breakdown here with everything on the line? A lot of players say, you know what, I'm not fooling around. I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to submit the best deck or my best deck and get it done and get in and be ready for the playoffs as we see 35 copies of Grixis Midrange. That is no joke, followed by 18 copies of Mono White Midrange, which is the deck that we saw take down one of the Canadian RCs over the past weekend, also known as a Mono White Panza. So do you have any initial thoughts on this metagame breakdown, Beky?
I mean, so I've been doing the metagame breakdown for as long as VML has offered a metagame breakdown, obviously save for the season and a half that I have not been here. And this is easily the most diverse metagame that I have ever seen since starting to do this for the VML. And it's like kind of beautiful to see. I mean, this if you've played this standard format either in preparation for the RC that's coming up or another event, you understand that this is an extremely diverse standard format compared to what we have kind of been slogging through for years and years. And it's been pretty diverse since pretty much Brothers War and even before that. But Grixis midrange has been kind of the thing to be doing since Dominaria United, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down here. And Mono White midrange is kind of doing the same thing that Grixis is and just picking up little bits and pieces from new sets as they come along, but really have been strong since from Kamigawa to Neon to New Capenna and so on and so forth.
Yes, it's definitely a very powerful deck. Didn't even need to change much from set to set. It's just, Shieldred is still a card to be reckoned with. And we have seen some additions. I've seen some, and I see it on the bottom here. There's some Reanimator that we've seen. Rakdos Reanimator, we've seen
Mhm.
4-color Reanimator, we've seen Grixis Reanimator, all sorts of decks like that. Now, Emma, taking a look at this chart, what do you think the best position deck was going into this week?
I think it's difficult. Like Becky said, the meta is pretty diverse right now, and we oftentimes see a standard meta where we get like a trifecta of one deck beats another deck, which beats the third deck, which beats the first deck, and so like it goes in a circle. But right now we have some interesting other strategies like Mono Blue Tempo. I would maybe not register as like a top 3 in my choice in standard, but it has some really good matchups. So I think It's difficult to say. I mean, obviously the VML has some interesting strategy because you know who your opponent is going to be. So when selecting a deck, you have a little bit of insight into potentially what your opponent might bring and what you might want to bring in response to that. But then also you can accidentally metagame yourself pretty easily by making a wrong assumption. So I think going into the final week, if your opponent has had a typical deck going through it all and it's done really well for them, maybe it's an opportunity to pull out a niche pick to try to beat your opponent. So I don't know if I would say there's a top deck. Obviously, Grixis midrange was very popular. I'm a big fan of the mono white deck personally, but it does lose some key matchups. So I think it's a bit hard to say. I'm excited to see the spread that we're seeing here, though.
No, and like you said, there is definitely a spread of decks that we will be featuring tonight, anything from Aggro to Reanimator. But we are going to start things off with a Grixis mid-range mirror. Now, this match is live. This is going to happen here and now. We are going to see who is going to take this one down and move on to the playoffs. Our first player of the evening, Sky Bauerschmidt Sweeney, a mainstay of the VML. They are absolutely phenomenal, a great player. And they're bringing what seems to be their choice. They're the most popular deck for sure, and one of the strongest decks in the field in Grixis midrange. Their list looks pretty stock, but is there anything here that stands out to you, Beky?
I mean, so this is kind of interesting. I think the things that surprise me the most are in the sideboard, but going and taking a peek at the things that are available in the main board, it does seem to have a lot more instant speed interaction than a lot of the normal Grixis decks. Between things like the normal set of Cut Down and Abrade, we're also playing a copy of Anoint with Affliction and Go for the Throat to have a little bit of a spread in taking down different adversaries that this deck is going to face off against, as well as some copies of Make Disappear. So I think it's kind of interesting to see that spread and not playing as many permanent spells in the form of creatures as I think a lot of the decks have kind of veered towards, but is still playing, you can't go wrong with some Reckoner, Bankbusters, Fable the Mirror Breaker, Invoke Despair. I think Invoke Despair is kind of the weird place where it's kind of falling out of favor the more that people are playing a lot of very like creature heavy decks, the more that people, even the mono white decks, are playing things like Spirited Companion or Ossification. And if they're able to ossify just a Fable the Mirror Breaker token, they get to basically have an enchantment go away for free that they don't really care about anymore. So I think Invoke Despair is kind of one of those things that has ebbed and flowed the most for this deck, but still the 4 copies that we're used to seeing from this Grixis deck.
Yes, absolutely. And on the other side, Sky's opponent, Zoe Connell, has also brought Grixis midrange. Now, one of the things about the Grixis midrange decks is, as Becky had pointed out, some of the, like this is a one of here, one of there. A lot of the Grixis, it has a lot of play. It's like, am I going to play Brotherhood Zen in the main? Am I going to play Negate in the main? How many copies of Rankin or Backbuster do I want in the main? How many copies of Abrade or Cut Down? Now, when you look at this list, when you look at Zoe's list, Emma, is there anything that pops out to you in particular? I see that she chose to play the full 4 copies of Record or Bankbuster, which seems pretty good in this matchup in the mirror.
I think Reckoner Bankbuster is one heck of a card. I love to see it. It's played in so many of the meta decks. The full 4 copies seems like a really good decision, in my opinion, although maybe a little bit unusual. I'm a bit of a Grixis hater. I've always sort of wondered why not run Rakdos if we're not running all of the counter spells, but it looks like we have the 2 Make Disappears and the Negate, which are sort of the bane of mono white's existence. So I absolutely understand why we're seeing them. And then it looks like the full 4 Corpse Appraiser as well, which is definitely why Grixis. That is the answer to the why Grixis question.
Yes,
the deck looks decently standard, one-shouldered in the side, which is maybe a little atypical, but I'm excited to watch it play out.
yes, absolutely. And our players are getting ready right now to play for us live here, VML Season 9, week number 7. As you see, Zoe at 4-2. This is a must win. And Sky Bauerschmidt Sweeney at 5-1, but would drop to 5-2 and might be on the outs in that division for the playoffs as well. So both players, no pressure, obviously, but we're it looks like our players are ready to go, and we will be watching from the side of Sky. They are on the bottom of our screen, and on the top you see Zoe. Both players on Grixis midrange. And what do you think about this opener, Beky?
I mean, I don't think you could ask for, you could ask for something better. This Invoke Despair could be a Fabled Mirror Breaker, and then I would say that this is probably one of the best hands you could possibly have. But I guess the only downside for this right now is that we don't have something that we can easily put into the yard for this Corpse Appraiser to activate the moment that it enters the battlefield.
Yes, and we see Corpse Appraiser is the first draw for Sky as well, so doubling up on that. Zoe able to draw that third land that I'm sure she was very relieved to see. We see double Invoke Despair, Corpse Appraiser, Blood Tithe Harvester, and Negate, and 2 lands in Zoe's hand now.
Sorry, we're experiencing a slight technical difficulty, so what we're going to do is we're going to restart the match. So just give us just a moment, okay?
Yeah, to please take your time as we wait. Now, remember, there is a lot on the line this season. There are big cash prizes. The top 8 in the VML is going to make their regional championships. Top 16 get qualifier weekend badges, and the top 8, for the first time ever, the VML is holding a VML champs at the end of the year that will be made up by the top 8 from seasons 8, 9, and 10. So those 24 players will be battling it out, and the top 2, the 2 finalists from the VML champs, will each get a Pro Tour invite. So a big thanks to Wizards for making the season possible and also providing those invites for the next Premier Magic Circuit event. We'll see what Pro Tour that ends up being, with the next one being in Barcelona is pretty exciting. So hopefully somewhere awesome for our VML competitors as well. But super exciting. And obviously cash is pretty good too. So huge prize pool this season. There's a lot on the line, and you got to be in it to win it. So a lot on the line for these 2 players here wanting to seal up their place in the playoffs.
Can you refresh me for the standings of these 2 players and for the chat as well, just so we understand what's at stake with this match?
Absolutely. So both of our players are coming out of Division 1 in the VML, and we have Sky Bauerschmidt Sweeney at a record of 5-1 and Zoe Connell at a record of 5-2.
Okay.
4-2.
Oh, 4-2, excuse me.
4-2.
4-2. And how it works out though, with the way that their division is, there is one competitor that had a 6-0 record going into this week. So Zoe definitely needs to win if she has any hope of getting in the playoffs. And that would obviously help the tiebreakers against Sky, because at that point, Zoe would have beaten Sky. And if Sky wins, it's a clean win in, because there is one player at 6-0. Sky is at 5-1. And then there are, I believe, 2 players at 4-2. So it's just
if there is a tie, it comes down to game win percent, I believe, as the breaker.
Yes, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it goes head to head then percent, because it might be because if Zoe wins and Sky loses, they would both be 5-2. Correct. And then they have another player who's also 4-2. If they win, they would also be 5. We'd have a 3-way tie. Ooh. I think it's head to head and then game win percentage. It's a close division, that's for sure, which is one of the reasons that we chose to feature this match here tonight. It's definitely super exciting. And like I said, not a surprise that I feel like these players would bring a deck like Grixis Midrange. It's something you just rely on it. It's just good cards, some of the best cards in the format, in like Shieldred, and honestly, Corpse Appraiser has been above and beyond lately, especially with these Reanimator decks popping up. It's one of the best weapons against decks like that. And it has a lot of play. It can hang against aggro style decks, mono red. I mean, Shieldred itself could take down a mono red deck, but with a very with such just removal like Cut Down, Abrade, Brotherhood's End, and being able to play a 1 red spell and a black spell, like with the mana base of Grixis, like they can play just about anything they want, even Atraxa, apparently. So
I think Grixis midrange makes a lot of sense as a choice as well, just because of the outplay potential. The deck is strong in the mid and late. You just have a lot of options throughout the entire course of the game, where some other decks can either run out of steam, or if you don't manage to get yourself out on the board and ahead, your potential for winning the game, I think, falls off late. But Grixis has a lot of entirety of the game you can get ahead, and I think that's why it's going to be a really interesting matchup to watch the mirror specifically, because they're both going to have that outplay potential. But I definitely understand why they chose this deck.
now I wonder, one of the cards that I have seen fall out of style, I guess, with these Grixis mid-range decks is Siphon Insight. And it doesn't seem that Grixis has gotten any less popular. And it was a very popular card in the mirror. So why would Siphon Insight have slowly been kind of phased out of these? People were playing 2 copies in their main board, which would be terrible against something like mono red, and it was really only good in the mirror or mono
It's
white.
mono
I would
white,
say.
yeah.
So, when you're playing against Azorius soldiers or something like that, you're like, oh, well, it missed,
I'll
but
take this
that's a
Resolute
lot.
reinforcements. I don't know, like
Right. So why do you think that a card like that with Grixis seemingly staying steady in popularity would have fallen out of favor from these Grixis mid-range players? What do you think, Beck?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It is because of this rotation towards some more aggressive style decks and trying to just like get under Grixis. So we are seeing a big uptick in things like soldiers, in things like mono red, even some other kind of more aggressive strategies and what can be done there. And on top of that, like the mono blue tempo deck, like you're gonna get like a fading hope, maybe an impulse. Like you're not getting very great things for your 2 mana spent. And there's just other things that those card slots could be taken up doing that are getting a little bit more consistent results for your deck than Siphon Insight when everyone was just trying to play the most powerful thing and you knew that you were going to get a powerful thing. Now people are doing powerful things, but they're kind of doing it with interesting pieces all coming together, going back to the mono blue mid-range or the mono blue tempo deck as an example. And so it's just
All
become very
right.
unreliable to
Thank
find
you.
something that is
It-
extremely strong.
Sorry for the
Yes.
delay, but we are ready to go back to the live match. Thank you for your
Oh,
patience.
wonderful. Now, our players have restarted this match, so we get 2 brand new starting hands to take a look at. Still Skybee Sweeney on the bottom and Zoe on the top of your screen. Sky could not have kept this hand any faster. Any thoughts, Emma, on this opener?
I know we said last time perhaps the hand was like almost potentially the best possible hand, but I would like to disagree and say that this is perhaps the best possible hand. I love a 2-drop in this deck, Blood Tithe Harvester. Such a good card, followed by Fable. It's the curve that I love to see out of this deck. So I'm very excited. But we have the 2 Corpse Appraisers in hand at the top as well, which is interesting.
It's actually Zoe drawing a
Right.
3rd Corpse of Praiser, right? That's and double a braid as well as a Blood Tithe Harvester of her own, but no 3rd land yet for Zoe as we see Fable of the Mirror Breaker coming down on the side of Sky. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, most powerful card in Standard right now. What do you think, Becky?
I think it's between this and Wedding Announcement. I've kind of been talking about it a lot, and I think if Fable the Mirror Breaker just didn't exist in Standard right now, then Wedding Announcement would be wreaking a lot more havoc than people are realizing, aside from potentially Shieldred. But I think just the 4 mana to first 3 mana cutoff is extremely big in a format like Standard.
Yeah, and wow, we see Zoe deploying a braid on the Goblin Shaman token. So saying, you know what, you can keep your Blood
Hmm.
Tithe Harvester. I need to kill that annoying little goblin. Now, is that trying to keep Sky off of something like an Invoke Despair or being able to ramp into bigger threats? Or do you think that perhaps Zoe wants to keep Sky from casting their own Corpse Appraiser and eating the Blood Tithe Harvester and getting even more value off of their removal spell? What do you think, Emma?
I think that it's mostly a counteraction against the ramp that you can get off of the treasure tokens. I think when you're sitting on 2 lands and haven't drawn your 3rd land yet, you're going to be a little bit scared of getting on the back foot here in terms of mana value. And I thought it was interesting too, watching the discard from Sky, not knowing that Zoe hadn't hit their third land yet. So we had to make some interesting decisions there for the discard. But luckily, Zoe just got that third land, so I'm excited to see how it pans out. Now we have potential for Corpse Appraiser on board. A couple of good options here.
Yes,
I was really worried that they weren't going to hit the third land drop. It was making me nervous.
Oh, I'm sure Zoe was just as worried. But with this third land, we see a Corpse Appraiser coming down on Sky's side. Now, Zoe does have the answer for the reflection of Kiki Jiki, but having the Blood Tithe Harvester and the Corpse Appraiser out, a removal spell and counter magic, which we may see here to protect this reflection. Is Zoe going to be able to get back into this game even after drawing that third land? What do you think, Beky?
Well, this is kind of interesting because we continue to just take out the pieces that don't allow us to play one of our 3 Corpse Appraisers and be able to pick up new cards. So unfortunately, even if we tried to go for this Brotherhood's End, it would be hit by this Make Disappear. So in choosing to play around that, going for a Blood Tithe Harvester on our own, that's also going to give us a blood that gives us a little bit of an easier avenue to ditching one of these Corpse Appraisers so that we can kind of turn that online, especially now that we've already seen Sky deploy one with no value extra.
Oh, and that cut down the natural predator of Blood Tithe Harvester, going to take care of the Blood Tithe Harvester on Zoe's side so that Skies can get in the red zone here with that Corpse Appraiser, bringing Zoe from 11 down to 5. Looks like Zoe is thinking about blooding away maybe one of these Corpse Appraisers. That will be what happens. What does Zoe want to see here, Emma?
I think at this point, another piece of counter magic would be great if we could enable the Brotherhood's End and then counter potentially to Make Disappear. But we are sitting on Sky's side. They're sitting on 4 lands at the moment, so it's going to be a little bit tricky. And unfortunately, we still have the 3 Corpse Appraisers on Zoe's side, so it's looking a bit sad. It's just the speed at which Sky was able to get online with those low to the ground cards. That's why I love a low curve. Was very impressive.
Yes, we definitely saw Sky take control of that game quickly and never give it back. Even with that third missed land, unsure if Zoe, with the nice curve that Sky had and everything, powerful cards, just everything you could ask for in a Grixis mid-range game. So Sky will take that first game down, and we are on to game number 2. Looking at some of the sideboarding choices here, wanting the Graveyard Trespassers, not wanting those Shieldrids. Would you see a card like Duress coming in here? What do you think, Beky?
I think Duress is a little bit too strange. Like Emma's talking about how great a low curve can be. And usually with Duress, you're either trying to get through pieces of counter magic or you are trying to take out something that is really expensive with your 1 mana spell. And there aren't a lot of expensive things save for Invoke Despair that you'd want to kind of get rid of. And a lot of the counter magic that you could be walking into, you can kind of just play around because they're mostly Make Disappears. So it just ends up being going for a little bit more active pieces and things that are actually getting Sky around Duresses in case their opponent brought them in as well.
All right, this is an interesting opener here. We see a Flame Blessed Bolt, Anoint with Affliction, Invoke Despair, Razor Lash, and a Fable, but only 2 lands. Any thought about this opener, Emma?
This is a very tricky opener. If you hit the 3rd land drop, you're in a great position with your Fable, but I think it's going to be a tough decision. I am greedy and would be tempted to keep, and I see Sky hovering that keep button.
We're on
right
the
now.
draw. We can keep it.
1 game 1, right?
1 game 1. We're
yeah,
on
the
the
game's a game.
draw. We've got this
Yeah.
low curve. Easy peasy.
Now everybody in chat knows what kind of Magic players we are. So
Yes. They've learned a lot. And look, see, never punished. I mean, we
Never
might be if we
punished.
draw a blue card and can play a blue spell, but that's fine. Everything's fine.
Who needs blue? I said who needs blue? I think
Yeah,
that
you
is
started this
fine.
up by saying that. Yeah.
now we see a different. Now Zoe's getting on the battlefield here first with Blood Tithe Harvester. Flame Blessed Bolt going to take care of that real quick. Flame Blessed Bolt, a card that I have not seen in too many Grixis mid-range decks. And what was that about not having blue lands?
Yeah, absolutely never punished. Why would we be?
Easy game.
Now
I mean, on Zoe's side, the turn 4 shoulder is perhaps going to be difficult to remove unless we draw enough lands for the Invoke Despair, which we're getting there. We're definitely getting there.
Yes, that was an interesting play a land and pass the turn from Sky. We did not see the Razor Lash come down there. Any thoughts why that might have been, Becky?
The only thing I can think of is that we're maybe hoping to discard it to the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but we're being really passive with it. Still not even playing the Fable this turn. This time, good call. There is a negate in Zoe's hand, so we're avoiding that coming down. But both of these players being very safe, worried about a lot of counter magic that isn't really in either of their hands, save for that negate that wouldn't have interacted with the Razor Lash.
I believe
Nice.
the deck only runs what 3 pieces of counter
Mhm.
magic, maybe more after sideboarding. I would have liked to see maybe Sky get on the board a little bit faster because of how wonderfully it worked in game one. But I do appreciate being conservative, aware of removal, taking your time,
Yeah, it looks
and we're
like
still playing against the negate at the moment.
Mhm.
flirting with that Razor Lash, and it looks like that will be the play here. An Abrade can temporarily take care of that, but Zoe does have 4 non-basic lands in play, so it is very cheap to come back and can come back right away as Sky has 2 black mana available to them. And Corpse Appraiser, the draw here.
Whew.
It looks like
That
Sky is relying very hard on baiting a piece of counter magic, a 2-mana counter spell at the moment, which I understand. Because when we move to play something like Invoke Despair, it makes sense to posture a counter spell in response.
and a pretty good draw on the side of Zoe. We see her cast her own Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but this one will resolve. So a Goblin Shaman onto the battlefield. Brotherhood's End, the draw on Sky's side. Probably not too interested in casting that one at the moment. Can cast the Corpse Appraiser, and now we know there is no way for Zoe to stop this Invoke Despair either. So looks like Razor Lash is interested in getting in the red zone. Can't block anyway, so might as well get across. Zoe down to 13, and Invoke Despair will be the follow-up. This is painful if you're Zoe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the little bit of coping that we're having in this moment is saying that our one card ate up 2 modes of Invoke Despair, but Sky still gets to draw a whole card off of that. So still not looking too great, and this Shieldred is going to have to start doing some work for Zoe.
Yeah, after seeing the single negate out of Zoe as well, I feel like Sky feels pretty confident in tapping out to play those powerful, strong spells. But now we have to come up with an interesting way to deal with Shieldred, which doesn't look like we have at the moment on Sky side.
Yeah, it looks like Razor Lash ready to get in. Zoe saying, you know what? That's fine. Go ahead. I'm not, I got to keep this Shieldred alive. So could have been a bluff. Zoe won't know. That's totally fine. Sky's saying, all right, I'm still at 18. It's pretty high life total. What do I do here? It looks like Corpse Appraiser is pretty much the only option at the moment.
It's pretty funny to me. Shieldred, since its existence in Standard, I would be interested to know how many turns it stays on a board without ever doing any attacking or blocking and just sits there and does its damage with its passive ability. Because I'm pretty sure that it's like less than 20% of the time that it attacks or blocks. I can barely remember a time that I've ever attacked with a Shieldred.
I remember attacking once and being like, oh, this is fine. I was playing as Mono White and they cast the main phase Wandering Emperor. I'm like, I'm never attacking with Shieldred again.
Yeah.
So it was really early on. I was like, I'm never ever attacking with Jin.
Yep.
I don't know that I have since. So
We see Zoe using Shieldred here for attacking, however, and I
Oh.
understand
I love it.
because of the intention of, sort of getting back on your feet, evening up the life total. You want to start putting pressure on Sky in this situation. And on Sky's side, they still have nothing necessarily to remove the Shieldred unless at some point Zoe decides to go for a block and we can use the Brotherhood's End. But we will start drawing cards off of Reckoner Bankbuster. So
very carefully because each one hurts a little bit.
Yes.
So
but we have to find that. I think we have to find that removal. An Invoke Despair, something on our side.
yes. Sky dropping down to 10 and gonna do a little more digging with this Corpse Appraiser as it comes down. Pretty sure there is a Blood Tithe Harvester in a bin somewhere. No, there's not. Oh no,
They've
it got
all been
exiled.
by either
That
Annoyant or
happened.
Flame Blessed Bolt.
That's right. Oh my goodness. No wonder it didn't come down earlier.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty interested in Sky's decision to go for a lot of those exile abilities post board because it is interesting. Like, sure, you're taking away ways for your opponent's corpse appraisers to kind of eat their own yard, but you're also making it like this so that you had no options as well, despite getting rid of some of those early creatures. So that's a bit unfortunate, as now this Razor Lash Transmogrant not being able to attack. And the Shieldred, I said it had to do work, and sure enough, she did some work.
Yes,
Did
Shieldred.
a
There was
lot.
also a backup copy in Zoe's hand as well. So Sky taking a look at their own Shieldreds here for game number 3 and saying, you know what?
Wait a minute.
That was pretty good. Hindsight's 2020. You're coming in here in game number 3. Very exciting. Each player with a game to their name, and game 3 will take it down. We'll see who's going to be moving on to the playoffs. This is very exciting. This is for all the marbles. Either you win and you're in, you lose, try again next season. And y'all should definitely try again next season.
I love it when it comes to game 3.
Whew, we're in for a treat tonight then. I'll tell you what.
Oh, good. I love it.
All we know are the lengths of the matches. But
Okay.
I made it sound like I know something that I shouldn't know, but all we know are the lengths of the matches.
We're on the 2 lands again.
Yes.
And
This time we go first. Oy.
This time on the play, there are 2 castable spells in Flame Blast Bolt and Anoint with Affliction, but
Whoa.
Sky's saying this is just too greedy. Oh, now this one hurts. 2 lands again, and they're both pain lands. And we have the exact opposite on the top. Zoe with 6 lands and a go for the throat. One of them a cycling land, and obviously draws a land for the first turn of the game. So Flood versus Screw, who's going to take it down?
Well, we drew a Reckoner Bankbuster on Sky's side, so that helps quite a bit.
Yes. I'm sure Blade Coil Serpent, probably not the best thing that you want in your hand. We only have 2 lands, but Reckoner Bankbuster, a much better artifact for the situation. A Reckoner Bankbuster also on the side of Zoe, but is going to decide to not play it.
I was worried about both of these hands until I saw Reckoner Bankbuster on each side, and that just goes to show the power of that card. I'm no longer that concerned about either hand.
Sky didn't keep a hand with Reckoner Bankbuster. They drew
it was a draw.
But
They both drew the Reckoner Bankbuster.
Oh my gosh. It's like the sixth sense of just like, you know what, everything's gonna work out fine.
Yep.
Because I was gonna say Sky has a whole lot more discipline than I do. I would have kept the first hand. I would have been like, I could draw a 3rd land on turn 4, and if I still get to Fable afterwards, I'm fine.
Well, it looks like it is working out for Sky as they are casting Fable the Mirror Breaker here. Now, Zoe has been holding up mana each turn, but has either a go for the throat as the only option on Sky's turn, or has a Corpse Appraiser and a Reckoner Bankbuster in hand. Besides that, 4 lands. We'll see that go for the throat taking care of the Goblin Shaman token. Now that's a piece of premium removal being used on a Goblin Shaman token. What are your thoughts on that, Emma?
I tend to remove the Goblin token just because of the mana generation, getting you so far ahead. Although you are then left on Zoe's side with no removal for Kiki Jiki at home, as I like to call it. Which can be a problem, but we don't have a Blood Tithe Harvester on the board, which I think is potentially one of the best combos with Kiki Jiki at home, just to generate those extra blood tokens for removal. So I understand wanting to go ahead and use your removal now. It's also a decent use of mana on Zoe's side, considering we're not holding too much else in our hand at the moment. But if a shoulder did come down on Sky's side, having that go for the throat would be amazing. However, Sky did side out shouldered in game 2. We didn't see a shouldered from Sky, so Zoe might be thinking that the shouldered is still out.
Ooh, I like this. This is Guts from Sky. As we see Invoke Despair being deployed into 2 open mana on Zoe's side. What do you think Sky's thoughts were there, Beky?
I think it was, there's no way that you have a counterspell if you waited to play the Reckoner Bankbuster until turn 4. It just is such a common way for you to be like, here's my Reckoner Bankbuster, I'm going to draw off of it the same turn that I play it. And, it's one of those moments where you're like, if you have it, you have it. But I think that this is a common enough play pattern that I'm going to either make you have it or you don't have it. And works out for Skye very nicely.
Yes, it does, as Skye has a gripful here, including 2 Razorlash Transmogger, which couldn't get their last game, but they are very good attackers. And another copy of Fable and the Mirror Breaker in Skye's hand, as well as a Corpse Appraiser, double lands, and that Blade Coil Serpent, which can haste itself out there and get pretty nasty pretty quick. But it looks like Skye is going to go with a Razorlash first, staring down Zoe's Record Bankbuster, going to crew up their own Record Bankbuster with this Razorlash and gonna get in the red zone. I mean, Zoe is at 10 after this attack. That's a pretty low life total. It's kind of getting there with the threats that Skye has on this battlefield. We'll see Record Bankbuster drawing in response to that second Fable of the Mirror Breaker on Skye's side. What does Zoe need here, Emma?
A Brotherhood End would be great if we have Brotherhood End still in the main, but it's looking a little tricky. We don't have the shoulder to pull us out of the red zone this time in terms of life total. We have a second go for the throat, which is welcome as a piece of removal, and potential to draw off the Bankbusters, but it's getting a little tricky on the life total.
For sure. Making that little pilot token there from the first Record Bankbuster might help a little bit as far as a hero block, but we're looking at a little bit of removal, double Corpse Appraiser in hand. Whether or not anything to eat in the graveyards yet, though unsure about that. And just, it's 2 Corpse Appraisers and 5 lands and a 1/1 pilot against the world, it seems like, as Skye draws a tap land for turn and gonna get some Razorlash value here. Going to discard Razorlash to the Fable of the Mirror Breaker chapter number 2. Is it time to see that Blade Coil Serpent come down? What do you think, Beck?
I mean, so in the little player slides, Zoe mentioned being afraid of 2 cards. Kaito, which Skye did not bring in, and Blade Coil Serpent. So I also was absolutely floored when we kept a 2-land hand and put back Corpse Appraiser instead of this Blade Coil Serpent. But Skye is really making me look silly for thinking that.
I think tapped out except for the token on Zoe's side. Slamming the Blade Coil Serpent here doesn't feel too shabby. Just looking to finish the game on Skye's side.
Yeah, and it looks like Skye making sure to pay the correct amount of mana here. It's going to be a red, red, black, black, and perhaps a blue, blue. So going to do one of each of the things. Going to get haste, going to force Zoe to discard a card, and going to draw a card for themselves. Razorlash going to crew up the Bankbuster and getting in. This is a lethal attack that Blade Coil Serpent does have trample. Anoint with Affliction is going to take care of that pilot token before we get to blocks. Zoe does not have an answer here, so it looks like Skye is going to take this one down 2-1 in this Grixis mid-range mirror and move on to 6-1 on the season and to the playoffs. So good games to both of our players. Congratulations to Skye for making it into the top 32, and a wonderful season again to Zoe. And hopefully we get to see you play again next season. What a match.
It was super fun. The hands, I think, were some of the biggest decision making going into this game. The keeps, and like I said, me and Becky maybe were over here considering what got put back, what got kept, with some amount of awe and confusion. But I agree with Becky that Skye is an aggressive and solid player who is making decisions that I might not have the guts to do.
No, it's definitely very well played from both of our players. That was just excellent. And I'm ready to get into a little more almost playoff excitement here with our next matchup. We will be looking at Keyo here on, we call it Mono White Midrange. It's Mono White Ponza. This is a deck that took down a recent Canadian RC, and It has the full land destruction package of 4 Demolition Field and 4 Field of Ruin, which feels pretty good if people aren't playing a lot of basics. So just pretty much, just playing strip mines is kind of what's happening here. And the one of the benefits I imagine of playing a monocolored deck, but it looks about the same, lay down arms, farewell, Sarah Paragon, wedding announcement, as you had mentioned earlier, Becky. Does anything else stand out to you here, Beck, in this list at all?
I'm pretty interested in the fact that they're playing Elspeth Resplendent in the main. I think that that's a card that I personally have been kind of unimpressed with in the mono white deck. But it is kind of one of those things where if you're leaning towards this being a mid-range / control style strategy, just having as many planeswalkers that don't get tagged by Invoke Despair or things like Farewell at all really kind of gives you an edge in some of these matchups.
For sure. And we're going to take a look at their opponent here tonight. It's Blazin on Grixis Atraxa. A deck that I had mentioned earlier is a Grixis deck that just plays Atraxa. Take out 5 of the Invoke Despairs, put in 4 Invoke Despairs, put in 4 Cruelty of Gix, and there you go. Although one of the things that interests me about this list is the Unleash the Infernos. So that's definitely an interesting ad when you're playing mostly Grixis. This is base Grixis. Do you think that the mana base is consistent enough to maybe just cast Atraxa? What do you think, Emma?
I think it's going to be very difficult. You're not going to be getting Atraxa out anyway, except what is it?
Cruelty of Gix. Yes,
that's what I'm
that's
thinking
the one.
I find this strategy very interesting. It's almost a stock Grixis list with Atraxa. And I think that's very exciting. Atraxa is, again, one heck of a card. And the Unleash the Inferno is also what you said, is what I was going to point out as kind of a strange addition. But it is a way to deal with a mirrored Atraxa if you wind up in that position. Although it is interesting as a main board piece.
Yes, and it does kill just about anything in the mono white deck, except for perhaps a Sanctuary Warden with a shield counter. But it's an easier way to take care of something like Wedding Announcement or Reckoner Bankbuster or Restoration of Iganjo, which we also see from their opponents. So I'm ready to get into this matchup. We're going to be watching Keyo on Mono White Midrange versus Blazin on Grixis Atraxa. We will be on the side of our Mono White Midrange player. Now, both of these players at 4-2, both of these players, this is a must win if they want their season to keep going. And this is probably one of the things this Mono White deck does not want to see. What do you say, Beck?
Yeah, I've played actually quite a bit of the mono white and the white black decks with Demolition Field and Field of Ruin, and let's just say that those hands are the reason that I'm not playing them anymore. That being said, I think you would like to have a Demolition or a Field of Ruin in this matchup specifically. I think for ladder play, it's a little less reliable, but knowing that our opponent is playing this more or less completely 4-color, I'm literally only playing 1 swamp as the only basic in my deck, you're wanting as many of those as you can kind of scrounge together.
Yes, and we see the Fable of the Mirror Breaker coming down on Blazin's side. So really just flying, and we see the Demolition Field on Keyo's side playing Restoration of Iganjo. So finding that plains. One of the nicest things about this mono white deck is it can ramp while it is blowing up your lands. So they don't care that they are, down from activating their Demolition Fields or a Field of Ruins, especially when they are strict mines, and they are able to get those cards back with cards like Restoration of Iganjo. But any thoughts about this start from Blazin as we see a Cruelty of Gix? Is the white deck able to stop this, Emma?
At this point, with the Cruelty of Gix reliably on turn 4, it is a very difficult situation. Without ossification in mono white, there's not a whole lot you can do about Atraxa. I don't think we're running ossification in this list. Is that correct?
It does not look like
No,
it.
we are not. Destroy Evil I suppose, is the only other response that we could have. We're not holding one, and I don't think we're going to have time to get to farewell at this rate. So we're looking for Destroy Evil, or we're in the red for sure.
Yes, Keyo does have 2 ossifications in their sideboard.
Yes.
As Blazon's taking a look at the goodies Atraxa can give them. So it's quite a decision to make. There's a lot of cards to look at, and being able to take, it looks like 3 cards taken off: a Blood Tithe Harvester, a Reckoner Bankbuster, and a Brotherhood's End are the choices here. Demolition Field going to blow up one of the lands on the side of Blazon. We'll see if Keyo's even going to be able to make it to the next couple of turns. Like you said, it might not be able to survive until farewell, which is kind of a scary place to be.
It's tricky. In mono white, I feel like the only way to reliably get rid of Atraxa is with exile, and Lay Down Arms is a fantastic card, but Atraxa is so large, you're not reliably going to be able to lay down arms in Atraxa. So I think fighting into an Atraxa deck as mono white is a very difficult position, which is interesting because mono white is favored against a classic Grixis midrange. A little bit on the positive side for mono white. So, but that is exactly what you don't want to see as a mono white player is an Atraxa. Makes me sad.
Yes, Atraxa, a lot of keywords on there: Death Touch, Lifelink, Vigilance, and Flying. Cathar Commando looks like it's going to come down. Perhaps this Reckoner Bankbuster on blocking duty, if not the Cathar itself. And there are 5 lands, so Keyo will be able to play their 6th land next turn and will be able to farewell. But Blazon got so much value off of that Atraxa. Do you think a card like Farewell can help Keyo get back into this game? What do you think, Beky?
Oh, well, I
Ooh.
might have had a different answer for you a second ago.
Oh, yeah.
This is certainly a little bit spooky. At least the Unleash the Inferno is going to take care of things that we would have had to exile anyway, because we're definitely casting this farewell. And so I think that Keyo at this point is just hoping that this farewell is going to be enough, and that the things that are face up, we draw the things to start to counteract. Maybe after we play the farewell, the next turn we can start really kind of demolition fielding and going crazy and taking care of our opponent's lands and working with that.
Yes. Keyo looking very excited to play out this demolition field, play out this 6th land, is not very happy about having to cast this farewell and get rid of the only other permanent that they have in play, but is going to very quickly choose all 4 modes on farewell. So exiling all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and graveyard, saying, get the heck out of here. That was a not a good start to the game for Keyo, but able to kind of start clawing back into it. Hopefully, Blazon is at 27 life. Keyo is at 9. Wedding announcement in Keyo's hand, like you said, with 2 demolition fields on the battlefield already. But will it be enough here as the turn gets passed back to Blazon? Shields are down, so Blazon can do whatever they'd like, and it looks like they're starting with a Reckoner Bankbuster. We also know about the Brotherhood's End and the Blood Tithe Harvester in hand, but just a Reckoner Bankbuster and a draw followed by a tap land. So how do you feel if you're Keyo after seeing that happen? No new threats on the battlefield besides this Reckoner Bankbuster, Emma?
I think it's putting me in a more hopeful place for Keyo, for sure, especially with our draw, the Restoration of Iganjo, and we have at least gas in our hand. We're not just holding a hand of lands. We have some potential to get ourselves back on the board. I think the Reckoner Bankbuster and choosing to draw definitely makes me feel that Blazon is not holding a very strong threat right now that they want to put down on the board. So I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful on Keyo's side.
We see Corpse Appraiser from the side of Blazon, but no target. So just a 3/3 for 3, and then a Blood Tithe Harvester to follow that up. And looks like some candidates to crew this Reckoner Bankbuster. Cathar Commando keeps getting highlighted in Keyo's hand, but wouldn't be able to play and activate it. So is Keyo just going to take 4 here? What do you think, Beck?
Yep.
No,
Taking
yep.
4, going to 5. I mean, I still agree with the decision to go ahead and use our mana this turn, but it does feel a little bit bad that we took 4 and went to 5, especially with the amount of power that's on the other side of the board. But this is not too bad of a draw here for us, I don't
Yes, we
think.
see Eternal Wanderer, the draw here. Now, Restoration saying you can discard a card and return a card to the battlefield, but with both Wedding Announcement and Eternal Wanderer in hand, what do you, Beky, do you think that either of these are worth discarding?
In exchange for a Demolition Field, I actually think it's kind of a difficult question here. I've obviously boasted that I believe the Wedding Announcement is an extremely powerful card. Demolition Field is definitely tempting in this matchup. Honestly, I wouldn't fault Keyo for either direction. I think that this is kind of a difficult decision, especially with our low life total.
Yes, and it looks like flirting with that Eternal Wanderer. They're going to want to play that here. It's either Eternal Wanderer or the Wedding Announcement and a Demolition Field activation. So big choice here. Keyo at 5 life and going to play Eternal Wanderer. Now that is 4 white for a Planeswalker. No more than 1 creature can attack the Eternal Wanderer each combat. Plus 1 exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. You return that creature, return that to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of that player's next end step. You can 0 to create a 2/2 white samurai, or -4 for each player. Choose a creature that player controls. Each player sacrifices all creatures they control not chosen this way. Starts with 5 loyalty, as we see it exiling that Blood Tithe Harvester and going to just say go.
The playing the Eternal Wanderer here did leave us 1 mana short of Cathar Commando activation as well, so it was a tricky decision. Now we don't have a way to potentially destroy the Reckoner Bankbuster.
Oh,
Cathar Commando is only 1.
Is
Is
it
it
just
only
one?
1?
Yeah.
It is.
Oh well. We
Yep.
are actually fine. I lied.
It left the 1, but here's a Bray to attempt to kill that Cathar Commando. So in response, going to try to blow up that Reckoner Bankbuster, which will, in response to that, draw a card. So we see a little back and forth there. So Blazin loses their Reckoner Bankbuster, Keyo loses their Cathar Commando, and Corpse Praiser saying, you know what, I don't care about this Eternal Wanderer, I'm going to get in. So Keyo is down to 2. That Blood Tithe Harvester coming back down. 3/2 on the battlefield. That's a second lethal attacker, and the Blood Tithe Harvester that had originally been exiled by the Eternal Wanderer is also back. So that makes for 3 lethal attackers next turn. Eternal Wanderer going to do their thing and semi-wrath the board, leaving a Corpse Appraiser and an architect on the side of Keyo. 3/4 sizes up pretty good against this 3/3. Blazin still 4 cards in hand, though. Demolition Field's going to Stone Rain once again on Blazin's side. Keyo, however, has plenty of basic planes to pick from, and Wedding Announcement comes down. Now, is this turning the corner, Beky?
I would certainly feel like it if I was on the side of KO. Knowing that the only card in hand is that Brotherhood's End, the thing that you really have to worry about is just 2 removal spells, or 1 removal spell, a land, and then the Brotherhood. Well, even the Brotherhood's End doesn't, it would kill your Corpse Praiser too. So yeah, I'd just be worried about 2 removal spells, which certainly are possible for this Grixis deck. And with 3 Bloods in play to kind of cycle through a lot of the pieces that we have, I wouldn't be too surprised if Blazin was able to pull it out here or even next turn, but we do get to kind of replenish, make another blocker off of this Wedding Announcement, as well as make a 2/2 off of the Wandering Emperor on our next turn for KO.
Yes, and furthering gumming up that battlefield is what Keyo is looking to do, as there is no straight damage in Blazin's list. There is the absence of a card like Invoke Despair that has been replaced with the copies of Cruelty of Gix. So Corpse Appraiser getting in the red zone here. Keyo deciding, yeah, what do I block with?
This is a pre-recorded match, I can say that.
I haven't seen this match. I'm so nervous. You know, it's like the Brotherhood End is gonna just destroy. If we blocked with the Restoration, then that wipes out our blockers, which would be a big bummer.
Keyo is aware that is known information that Brotherhood End, but it's still pretty scary as we see Cruelty of Gix from the side of Blazon. Now, a lot of the times that we see this card cast, we see it just jump to chapter 3, but here Blazon is going to chapter 2, which is just a tutor. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, and shuffle. You lose 3 life. And Blazon is still at a very healthy 27. This will drop them down to 24, but they are grabbing whatever is presumably the best card left in their deck. Shall we take guesses to what it is, Emma?
The best card left in their deck.
Yes.
In this, other than Atraxa.
I wonder what any thoughts on what that
I
could
mean,
be,
it
Beky?
probably is an Atraxa. They have 3 bloods and they can discard an Atraxa with the Cruelty of Gix trigger on the stack.
Yeah,
Ooh.
it has to be.
So, Keyo, join this farewell here has a
Hurts.
very, very tempting thing. Now, can just cast it to exile the artifacts as well, and that would take care of the bloods. And it looks like artifacts
I
and
think we needed
graveyards
to
are going
hear-
to eat it.
I think we needed to hit enchantments, which would suck for us, but the Cruelty of Gix, I mean, okay, yeah, at least we got rid of the blood, so that's a part of it, and we still kept what we have. This still feels really scary to me.
Yeah, we see Blazon's upkeep stop has been set. So we are in Blazon's upkeep at the moment. And this is a scary, scary point. If you're a KO, you're just holding your breath, waiting for what's going to happen, or just absolutely just clicking the heck out of the battlefield too.
Yeah, it does go to draw. I had to make a quick look at Blazon's list and see if there was like any instant speed discard aside from those blood tokens, and it doesn't look like there is. So we're gonna have to find a new way to discard, presumably an Atraxa that we found off of our Cruelty of Gix.
Yes, and we see Brotherhood's End just gonna wipe things out here.
Ooh.
And go for the throat, going to finish off the restoration land. Go destroy evil. The draw here is a pretty good insurance policy as we see that wedding announcement making a token and flipping. So it's a 2-2 versus the world as we see Corpse Appraiser coming down, going to eat something out of a graveyard. Apparently a Corpse Appraiser of their own on Blazon side. Going to take a look at those top 3 cards. Let's see. Won't know what they take, but we'll know what they don't take. And it looks like they're passing on a land and a Cruelty of Gix. A Fable of the Mirror Breaker also going to be played. So that's a pretty good card.
KO,
on
not
KO's
wasting any
side.
time.
Yeah, trying to top deck a solution here. I mean, the positive thing is Blazon only has 2 cards in hand as well, and presumably one of them is Atraxa. So
now this is technically a solution. Wandering Emperor, probably one of the better draws in the deck for KO, able to play that out and hopefully exile one of the 2 threats on Blazon side and gain a little life, being at a very precarious 2 life right now. This could go wrong, but it needs to not if KO wants to continue playing game number 1 here. We'll see what happens. Wandering Emperor coming down. Does Blazon have an answer?
they have a single negate in the main board.
I was gonna
correct?
say, not there though.
It is not. So going to exile the 3/3 Corpse Appraiser, gaining 2. Well, as long as this happens, yes, that will happen. So bye-bye Corpse Appraiser. Gains 2 life.
But
Uh-oh.
we do have Atraxa mana now.
Oh, that is definitely a thing. And there is the Phyrexian angel. Speak of the angel. Here we go.
Angel, demon, devil. Atraxa is definitely the definition of I can be your angel or I can be your devil. So it is that meme.
Yes, and we see taking a look.
4 cards, casually.
Right, a casual 4 cards to hand. Regular Bankbuster, gonna draw. Is there something here that can be drawn? Another Reckoner Bank. I heard you like Reckoner Bankbusters.
Well, we do like Reckoner Bankbuster in this household. Unfortunately, Atraxa, also a very strong card.
Yes, as we move to sideboards. And now there are those ossifications as well as fateful absences, some depopulates, a lot of different choices here. Anything jumping out to you, Emma?
I believe in both Lauren of the third paths, or is there only one on the sideboard? Did we already put one in? I believe
We
in
have two in the
all of
main,
the
one in the side.
Laurens.
Yeah.
Yes.
All.
Agree.
We need the Laurens. The ossifications are an important part to me. It's your only solution for dealing with Atraxa. Lay Down Arms is not a bad card to keep in. I am we're taking one out, but I still feel like there's enough early for you to hit with the Lay Down Arms in terms of threats. I'm interested in what we're going to be taking out. I might be tempted to take out the Restoration of Iganjos, but it looks like we're going for Cathar Commandos. I still like the Cathar Commandos as an answer to Reckoner Bankbuster, though.
You have any thoughts, Beky, on things that you want to see come in? Does this look pretty fair? It looks like the two Laurens are staying in, but the one other Lauren is staying in the sideboard. Do you agree with that?
I think it's interesting. So Autumn Burchett has a mono white list and has an entire sideboard plan, and it does also say taking out Restoration of Iganjo and putting in Lauren. And the interesting thing about Autumn's views on Lauren is that you also always want to have your Lauren draw a card for you and your opponent, especially in the Grixis matchup, because your average card quality is just so much stronger than theirs. However, that is going to heavily hinge on what exactly you're keeping in and what you're taking out. Once again, there's a reason that I stopped playing this list, and it's because of these land situations that just break your heart. And then you're looking at those Restoration of Iganjos, and you're like, you could almost solve my problem, but not quite.
Okay, oh no. Oh,
Two wedding
so
announcements
sad.
is not a terrible keep.
True,
but
I agree.
It is not, and having the Field of Ruin and the Demolition Field, and
And another
and
one.
just listen, this part of what this deck does, and part of why it's so good is it just blows up all of Grixis' lands. So, we're gonna see probably a lot of that in this game from Keyo's side, and probably hoping that Blazin has their basic swamp in hand.
Do you go for the wedding announcement, or do you go for the land destruction here is the question.
What do you think, Beck?
I would start with at least one wedding announcement personally, and then spend the next few turns playing out the Field of Ruins. But I would probably have wedding announcement, go down, make one token, make two tokens, attack with them into anything, draw a card. And
I'm with you, but I see we went for the LD, which is not a bad decision considering we might be concerned about the turn 4 cruelty of Gix again. It is pretty spooky.
It is pretty spooky, and this certainly would keep it at bay. So I respect it being aggressive, and especially I think there is a little bit more of a lean towards this strategy since we were on the play, and that makes this land destruction just so much more potent than kind of previously. On the draw, I think there's a little bit more draw towards the wedding announcement first.
I like the casual second main playing my other Field of Ruin as I go. Like after you're done searching, be like, oh, by the way, I have another.
You might just be stuck on 2/3 lands for the rest of the game. I don't know.
Right. That's the hope. That is certainly what Keyo is hoping for here. Able to play, and now thinking about it.
I don't know. We've already committed to this bit so hard. I would have played the other Field of Ruin. I'm very much on the linear path kind of strategy. I would have been like, we're land destruction going to town. I would have played the other Field of Ruin here. So
I think for giggles, just for content, I might have too. So
yeah.
As we see Fable looting away a couple cards here, going to draw some fresh cards, not wanting a second bank buster, as Blazin seems to actually be stuck on lands. So this Goblin Shaman going to be doing some work for Blazin, allowing, we see that third land from Blazin and another Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So who needs lands when you have Goblin Shamans, as another Demolition Field is the draw here on the side of Keyo. Now, at what point do the Goblin Shamans outweigh the Field of Ruins?
I think they do now that we have two of them.
Yeah. That is pretty impressive. 1/1 going to stay at home, but making a couple more tokens here. Is Keyo going to be priced into double blocking one of these tokens? What do you think, Beky?
I would actually throw 3 in front just so if there is a braid or a go for the throat that we would have kind of gotten blown out by, we don't have that happen. But yes, I would be trying to aggressively trade with these goblin shamans, especially since we have another demolition field in hand.
Yes. But shh, don't tell Blazin. Another land on the side. Now, also drawing cards off these Reckoner Bankbusters, definitely helping things out on Blazin's side. 2 more treasures. So only 3 lands in play, but 6 mana available to Blazin, as looks like one of these Goblin Shamans will be double blocked. Going to order blockers here. See if Blazin has something to do. It looks like highlighting the creature. Unleash the Inferno on that poor little 1/1. So going to blow up one of the wedding announcements. Which announcement is going to go kaput? And it looks like the one with 2 counters on it already.
Yeah, that's definitely a little bit rough. And now we're even further from these 1/1s getting to a point where just one of them trades for one of the goblin shamans. So that certainly is a little bit of a rough turn for Keyo there.
Yes, as we see Keyo just sticking to their guns, though, gonna play out a demolition field, blow up another one of Blazing Lands, gonna grab planes of their own. Draw for the turn was Roadside Reliquary, only having an enchantment in play at the moment, though. So it is card draw, but it is minimal card draw as the turn goes back to Blazin. And double reflection of Kiki Jiki is a pretty scary thing to be staring down. Any thoughts on what KO needs to do here, Emma? Oh gosh.
Draw a farewell.
It just got worse.
Yeah. Agree.
That probably just about that. Now, Blood Tithe Harvester, one of the better targets for the reflection of Kiki Jiki, as it makes more blood tokens, is able to kill just about anything on the battlefield, especially those silly little 1/1s. So a hero block here from our 1/1 vampire token friend in front of that Reckoner Bankbuster. Going to take 4 off of those Goblin Shaman tokens, dropping to 12. And this is most certainly going to be lethal next turn. Loran of the Third Path is the draw. So we'll see if this Roadside Reliquary has anything for KO. And how about another demolition field? Oh boy.
I had a moment where I was like, you can't copy a reflection of Kiki Jiki, but we could have copied a reflection of Kiki Jiki and then I mean, there's not really a reason to do that, but it for fun, you know.
Yes.
Once you have 2 that don't have summoning sickness, you can just
Go crazy.
go down the
Yeah.
line.
Go nuts. Yes.
I would do that just to make arena lag a little bit.
Uh,
We've already talked about making decisions for content, and that would be one of mine.
Now, see, that's the most deflating thing. Blazin also plays out a land here. So after all of the hard work KO did,
Yeah.
blowing up all of those lands, Blazin still has 4 lands in play here. Oh, and we see a
I do
Lauren.
think this has been kind of a statistically bad draw for KO as well.
Yeah.
We've thinned our deck so much on this side out of lands, and we've still managed to draw not our basic planes, but our other lands. And it's been unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. And it was really heartbreaking to watch even just those first 2 hands that were certainly mulligans for us to go to 5. And the 5 was not bad. You were saying
The planes there just
Oh
hurt.
my goodness, that's painful. But a good game to Blazin, taking that one down 2 games to none on Grixis Atraxa over KO on mono white mid-range. So Blazin going to finish the season 5-2 and should be good for a playoff spot there in division number 14. But good games to both of our players. Good luck to Blazin in playoffs. And KO, we hope to see you again next season as we move on to our next pair of playoff hopefuls. We're going again, there is so much on the line this season. We've got VML championship invites, there's a ton of cash, RC invites, qualifier weekend invites. Got a lot of sweet stuff in the pot. So these playoffs, big deal. And every match that we watch tonight has people that are in playoff contention. Hopefully, we'll be able to see them take it down.
I had a moment where I was like, we could at least like start to talk about the matchups that we're gonna watch while we're waiting to get images of the deck lists. But when you see the lists that we're about to see, you will understand why I couldn't do that.
It's funny because I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't like say it. I just looked. I'm like, 4-color ledge. All right, we're just gonna talk about.
And they're
I
both
just-
4-color legends, but they're very different.
I just opened the
Ooh.
list for the very first time and I was like, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
I love it, but I am confused.
So this 4-color legends deck is kind of a take on, honestly, like it's very close to Esper Legends, but it's like, I want to play Slowgurk. So, and I
But
feel
you're
like that's kind of
also-
where everything went downhill.
Yeah, but
or
then you're also
uphill. I
playing
don't know.
Malira and Rustine. Like, you're actually playing a decent amount of green cards in this deck.
Glissa's not a bad inclusion at
Oh,
all.
yeah.
I
This is extremely strong.
absolutely love it. I'm so here for this list. Now, we have seen a lot of Esper Legends lists floating around. And in the past, we have seen some 5-color Joda, like domain legend sort of decks floating around. They tend to be heavier, sort of like, Gruul and things like that. What is this like the happy medium between like Esper Legends and 5-color? Is this just like there's a 3-color, 4-color, and 5-color Legends deck? Or like what sort of advantages does this 4-color Legends deck have over having like just playing straight Esper Legends or going the full length and playing like 5-color Legends? What do you think, Emma?
I think this deck must have a pretty different strategy. I think because Esper Legends is a deck that I play a lot, and one of your sort of like main win cons and main patterns of play is a strong 2-drop, which is Thalia, which we have, into Rafine as your 3-drop, and then maybe preferably a Shouldered, so you can just gain a bunch of life off of the Connive off of Rafine. But we're only running, we have 3 copies of Rafine, so I guess they're not in much of a different spot, but I think the rest of our cards are not so much leading into that like draw and discard pattern that Esper Legends loves to run.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely an interesting list. Taking a look at it, they're just very powerful cards, each on their own. That's why they are legendary. So let's take a look at Noor's opponent this week. Is Josh at 5-1 here in division number 11. And they also are just bringing it doesn't say a Legends deck, it's a Legends deck. Ratadrabik combo. So we have actually featured this deck. I don't know if it was early on this season or last season, but this is a combo deck with cards like Ratadrabik of Urborg and Jaxus the Troublemaker from New Capenna. So definitely a different group of legends that we're looking at here, looking more to combo off, and a lot of sort of cards that will enable that, like Owl the Dawn Sky, and Hajar to protect these pieces of the combo. Any thoughts on this combo deck, Beky?
Okay, so I have to imagine that you would have featured it in this season because I think a huge part of this is going to be Mondrak and being able to create those non-legendary copies of each of these creatures that die. This is really sweet. It's worth mentioning that I think these are both combo decks because there is a combo between Old Rustine, Slowgurk, and Balira in the other deck as well.
Oh, snap.
Which I did not notice. So I am very intrigued and interested to see how this is gonna go. I think that the Thalia from the Slowgurk 4-color deck is going to be a little bit weaker just because these are both very creature-based decks, and so we're gonna lose out on like Malira just makes Thalia look a little bit sad as a 2-mana 3/3. So well, there's two 3-mana 3/3s because you got Hajar and Malira. So it'll be really interesting to see how this is going to pan out. And I think if you had me pick which one I think is slightly favored, I think that the Ratadrabik combo just has a little bit stronger of a game one than the Slowgurk deck, and so I would kind of be leaning in that direction. But there are 2 go for the throats in the Gurk deck, and so I think that that is going to be what we're hoping to see to break apart the first kind of attempt at the combo.
I'm very
like that.
excited that you pointed out the combo in the first deck, 'cause that was something I didn't pick up. I was sort of like, why not
Yeah.
Esper Legends?
Yeah.
If we have generally the core of Esper Legends, but I'm super excited to see the combo. And I just want to point out that I love the 4 Fable of the Mirror Breaker in this second list. It's such a good card.
Best card in
By the
standard.
way,
It's gotta go in there.
It
has
has to.
to go in. If you're playing red, you're playing Fable. Sometimes if you're not playing red, you're still playing Fable. It's just gotta
Can
be.
we also
It's just
talk
gotta
about
be.
the fact that on the back of Fable the Mirror Breaker, Reflection Kijiki says non-legendary creature? I guess the tokens that we're gonna be making are non-legend, so we can copy the non-legend copies that Ratadrabik is gonna make.
I think
Oh,
it's a
sure.
mana move too. Just the
Yeah.
treasure tokens are going to be really
Huge.
valuable.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see these 2 decks go at it.
I am absolutely. And now we were talking earlier, like that these are the exact opposite of people bringing Grixis mid-range. They're bringing these
Mhm.
awesome, powerful outlier decks. And I am very excited to see these 2 in action. So we have Noor on 4-color legends on the bottom of your screen here. And on the top of the screen, we have Josh. They are on the Ratadrabik combo. So Noor at 4 and 2, Josh at 5 and 1. And we are off to the races, as these are some opening hands here. Noor with Thalia and Urtai and a go for the throat. So a single piece of removal if you don't count the Iganjo in hand. And
Yeah.
Glissa Sunslayer, the draw as well. And we look at the top of the screen. Josh's hand. It's so funny to look at these hands. I see Glissa Sunslayer, 1 black green, a Jaxis, a 4 mana red, 4-drop, and the Owl of the Dawn Sky, a 3 white dragon. And it's just like these
Wild.
cards are all in the same deck, but they work together and it's lovely. And the mana works, which is the most important part. As we see Thalia come down. Now, Thalia not as impressive in this matchup as perhaps in some others. Any thoughts? Oh, and getting in the red zone here. Any thoughts on this start from Noor, Emma?
I agree with what Becky said earlier about Thalia not being quite as much of a house in this matchup, but keeping the go for the throat in the starting hand, I think, was a very valuable option. I'm interested in trading the go for the throat for Gwenna rather than playing the Glissa that turn. And these attacks are a little unusual, I think, with Thalia, but
Yeah, I
With
think we're just trying to get as much out of this Iganjo as possible that are in
I
our
think
hand.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a moment where I also was like, what are we even trying to bluff?
Yeah.
And down comes Out of the Dawn Sky. So Gwenna pumped up a little bit and is now a 3/4. And Owl definitely one of the more interesting cards because that can find some of the combo pieces for Josh. So Noor
They
definitely has
both
to tread
play
it
Owl, and they
carefully.
literally both mentioned that Owl is great because it finds combo pieces.
Right. So they both have to tread very carefully as we see Josh also playing out Jaxis the Troublemaker, which is another one of the combo pieces for Josh as well. Glissa Sunslayer gonna get in, draw a card, lose a life. It's a second copy of Thalia. So it looks like Noor happy to play out this first copy of Iganjo. No, going to go with the tap land instead before passing the turn back. Malira the draw on the side of Josh. And we'll see Hajar, Loyal Bodyguard. Legendary creatures get +1/+0 and gain indestructible at the end of turn if you sacrifice it. So gonna
Need to use
say
the airtime now to get in the destruction before Hajar. It's
yes. So it looks like and going to decide Urtai going to take care of that owl and is going to do some digging. Let's see. And finds the Ratadrabik of Urborg. Oh my goodness. Is it happening?
That's not what you wanted to see when you take that Owl. Oh, and there's another one? Okay, legend rule, but then we get to make a non-legend version. Wow. Oh boy.
This is definitely a crazy game of magic here. We see Glissa Sunslayer in hand. That's going to go bye-bye. And there's just going to be a million Ratadrabiks now.
Watching this deck reminds me, or these 2 decks play against each other, reminds me that there is not really a control list in Standard right now, because I feel like neither of these lists would be viable into Control. Just seeing the like pure chaos on the board right now, it makes me happy. I love it. I love to see wide boards and aggro magic being viable. It makes me happy for where Standard is at.
The thing
Yes.
that also is so funny to me is before we came on, Nicole was like, how comfortable are you both with Standard? Like, on a scale of like 1 to 10, how familiar do you feel with it? And I didn't really realize exactly what these two decks were. And I'm going to tell you, I feel like I was very prepared to talk about Standard. I was not prepared for this.
You were not prepared for Drivnod?
No, I was not
Shamanus?
prepared for Drivnod. Or Slogurk, or yeah.
My brain is just like, what if a board wipe?
Yeah,
But
those don't exist with these decks.
no,
At least not in game one.
Not in game one. It's almost it's as close to two decks that have very little interest at interacting with each other as possible. One of the things, Noor's hoping to stay in the sky with this Rafine perhaps and get a little lucky here and there. We'll see a Takanuma in Josh's hand. Now, these legendary lands are exceptional, obviously, in these 4-color, 5-color Legends decks because they are so cheap and so versatile that that's why we see Noor has an Iganjo in play, but also has one in hand, playing multiple of these lands. It's almost as to no cost to the players, as this first Ratadrabik gets in the red zone, going to connect. So Noor going to take 3, go down to 16. And it does have Vigilance, so it is still back on defense. Thinking about what to attack with here, and it looks like Thalia and Rafine both going to get in the red zone. Going to connive on that Rafine, drawing a land and a Malira, but going to discard 2 lands to the Rafine trigger. So it's going to stay a 1/4 for now. And now, is there going to be an opportunity for either of these players to combo off, or are we looking at kind of like a game of like cat and mouse and just poking each other a little bit here and there? What do you think, Beky?
I think that we are a little bit too far away on Noor's side of the board, unfortunately. And Josh has kind of already done the thing that we are hoping to do, which is make a bunch of our legendary creatures have non-legend copies. And with 4 Ratadrabiks in play, it feels like we are a little bit too far. And every single time one of these Ratadrabiks dies, like, Josh is pretty happy about that. So it's a little bit unfortunate that Noor is as far away from kind of putting together the Slogurk Old Rustine combo.
Oh, and Ellis of Core might be what wraps things up here on Josh's side. We see Drivnard Carnage Dominus, which is an 8/3 for 5. It's 3 black for an 8/3 legendary creature for Phyrexian Horror. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. So when these tokens die, drawing cards, losing life, and just get those triggers on the stack. This is what we were waiting for. We see a good game from Josh, and going to ping and drain and ping and drain and ping and drain. And lots of drawn cards, lots of things gonna happen. Hajar Loyal Bodyguard gonna sacrifice itself, gonna ping a whole bunch more, do a bunch more draining, and wow, that was some game of Magic.
Wow.
I didn't even entirely know what happened, but I'm okay with that. Fine.
It's kind of, I think it's made a lot more difficult by the fact that both of these decks are kind of trying to do a turn like that. And so the fact that you're like trying to watch what they're both doing and keep up like who needs what piece is making it a lot more hectic to watch. And hopefully this Slogurk deck is getting the Eternal Wanderer. You were mentioning that a board wipe would have been really nice in that last game, and we're going to see if we can bring that together. It's only 1 copy, but hey, we'll see what we can make happen.
Yeah, and all of the Thalias are out, like you mentioned. She's just not doing the work here. I feel like, unfortunately, our sideboard options are not doing a lot for us in this specific matchup.
Yeah, it's weird because we definitely have a sideboard that looks like we're hoping to play against a normal deck.
Yeah.
And actually, okay, for what it's worth, both of their sideboards look like that. Both
Yes.
of their sideboards look like they're trying to prep this to play against a meta deck, which, I mean, what else are you going to do? So it's funny to me to see how they prepared to go into this matchup and the differences between them as a result.
But like you said, these decks are not particularly looking to interact with each other, and by supplying too much from their sideboard, they're just slowing down their combo situation. So they're going to bring in the bare minimum, because in this situation, it's mostly who hits first rather than how much you can have. And since they don't have a lot with the intention of stopping the other person's combo, just due to the nature of the decks, they're just going to want to go into it as fast as they can.
I'm looking at one of each copy of all of these different dual lands. Like there's one pain land and then one check land, and one pain land and one check land. It's absolutely, the mana bases in standard right now are crazy. They're somehow crazier than modern mana bases, and I just don't even know how we got here.
Right. I can't imagine building one of these 4-color, 5-color decks, because like I have enough trouble with the Grixis where I'm like, how many fast lands versus slow lands should I be playing?
Yeah.
You know, this one's tapped unless there's 2 or more. This one's tapped unless it's 2 or less. I'm like, just somebody else figure it out. I'm a dirty net decker. Leave me alone.
You and me both.
Here we are getting into game number 2. Now, speaking of lands, there is only 2 lands on the side of Josh. So we'll see this go for the throat. Taking care of that, of being like, you know what, I'm not going to let this happen again. Keeping the reins on this game is Noor, as Slogurk hits the battlefield. I was very excited to see Slogurk in play, so glad to see that one hitting. And Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, a 3rd land and Fable on the side of Josh. It's a pretty powerful turn 3 play. But we'll see Rafine coming down on the side of Noor and growing that Slogurk up to a 4/4 with trample already. Is Josh going to fall too far behind here just at turn number 4 of this game number 2? What do you think, Beky?
I mean, I was about to be like, "Aw, darn, Connive says when you discard a non-land spell, but then Slogurk says when a land goes to the graveyard from anywhere." So it's actually kind of a sweet combination. Normally I would have said yes, this is kind of an unfortunate place for Josh to be, but I think that Mondrak, and especially coupled with this Goblin Shaman that we were already talking about being a really important piece, is maybe going to make this a little bit scarier.
Plus the Ratadrabik.
Ratatouille.
Already in hand on Josh's side, puts them a little bit more in the game. But on Noor's side, she has 2 pieces of the combo, correct, Beky? I'm relying on you to explain this combo to me.
Okay, so yeah, it is 2 pieces, but it really is functioning more between Slogurk and Old Rustine. And Old Rustine has I believe it's an upkeep trigger of you being able to discard a land, but Melira also specifically has a part that interacts with Slogurk's final ability, that is, if you have a creature go to the yard, you're going to have a creature go to the yard or come back to the graveyard. And Slogurk has an ability that when it goes to the yard, you're getting back all of your lands. So you're doing like this weird kind of back and forth with your graveyard, your lands, and Slogurk, Old Rustine, and Melira.
Girl, I'm a professional and I need a diagram of
Honestly, I don't even know if, like, I probably screwed something up in that explanation, but more or less I believe that's it.
It sounded
good.
You're
absolutely right. Yes. And there is protection for Slogurk here. Slogurk has a few different abilities. You can remove 3+1/+1 counters from Slogurk to return it to its owner's hand. And when Slogurk leaves the battlefield, you return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand. So it doesn't have to even like die. It's just as long whenever it leaves the battlefield. We see Ratadrabik coming down on the side of Josh here, but they are at 6, so it's a scary place to be. Here comes Grixis. That is being blitzed out, it looks like.
Yeah.
2 treasures to work with, and the Mondrak, Glory Dominus. We'll see. Grixis the Troublemaker targeting that Mondrak, making 2 copies of the 4/4, and then those 2 copies immediately dying, then coming back as a
Holy
whole
smokes.
mess more because those 2 copies die as legendary, but then they come back, and because each one comes back as its own trigger, and that triggers Mondrak and Ratadrabik, and they kind of just make a bunch of 2/2s. 2/2 Mondraks, lots of Mondraks. And now,
Holy
at what
smokes.
point does Arena break from tokens? Is the
I
question.
don't know.
256. I think you can make up to 256 tokens. It won't
Well,
let you make more than that.
Josh
I
is
actually have a
flirting
little
with
bit of experience with this. Back in
Phoebe.
during
Take it
the
away.
beta, I ran a unicorns and anointed procession deck. Couple other things going on there, but basically, we got up to about, I want to say, 500 tokens on both sides before the game started to slow down.
I
Wow.
believe they actually instituted a cap during the era of Scute Swarm, which was
Oh.
after beta because of problems with the game breaking. So I think that was around the time that a cap on tokens was instituted. I don't know the exact number. 256 is what is in my head right now, but that may not be correct.
No, I do believe you were right because I believe we are capped at the moment, but that cap's about to go away as Eternal Wanderer is here and is going to semi-wrath the board. So going to choose some creatures here to keep in play, and then everything else is going to go bye-bye. So
How does this work? How many things are we gonna be left over with from Ratadrabik triggers? Oh,
I
nothing, I
don't
guess. Okay.
think that it doesn't allow any, nothing stays around.
Okay.
I guess it is sacrificed, but
Mhm.
it's not exiled like the other. But now
Oh,
there
it
is
says when
a
another, so as long as you did pick the Mondrak, there were gonna be no triggers. Okay.
that is a relief. So thankfully Nora knows what they have a better idea on this matchup than
Nor
I do.
figured
That's
it
for
out
sure.
faster than all of us. It's okay.
Yes.
Prepared.
But
I
Rata-
guess a really positive thing about playing a deck like this is you, at least when you face an opponent with somewhat of a similar deck, you have some insight into how it's working. Which,
Mhm.
if I was in Nora's position here, I would be like,
Yeah.
So I totally understand.
so we
The
see
other Ratadrabik, though, from Josh, back on the field.
Yeah, we see some choices here going to attack with the Rafine, deciding what to connive away with Josh at 4 and not 3, unable to grow this Rafine to the point where it would be lethal. And thinking about going to discard the extra Slogurk in hand. So this is definitely a dangerous point. You have to kind of like very carefully because you don't want to get comboed out next turn. Your opponent's at 1. Ratadrabik has Ward 2, so go for the throat. Going to cost 4 here to make sure it goes through. Iganjo coming down as a land, and Glissa Sun Slayer, first strike, Death Touch 3/3 going to come down perhaps as a little bit of insurance here to protect Noor. Fable going to allow Josh to discard a couple
Whoa.
cards and going to just draw
Oh.
land, discarding both of those Drivnods. But land, probably not what they were looking for. Even the Sokanzin in hand, just not enough to do it.
They needed something to deal with the flyer, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it looks like Josh will
Wow.
not have an answer to that Rafine. So Nora going to take down game number 2 here, and we are moving to yet another game 3 tonight between our 2 4-color legend combo players.
I love it. What an
And
exciting time to be
I was
alive
gonna
in Magic.
say,
Right?
yeah. And exactly the thing that Emma was like, this is scary to even like look at what you would potentially have to play against, because like what if board wipe? And then that
Yes.
game, board
Right.
wipe. You
Yep.
had 300 creatures, but it did not matter.
Yes,
Mhm.
and definitely a time to compliment both of these players because not only are they piloting their own decks well, they are piloting around their opponent's decks quite well.
Yes.
And it's definitely impressive to watch, to see them like know what they're going know what the assignment is. They know what they have to do.
Mhm.
They know the cards to watch out for, what to play around, what to hold their removal for. So definitely a very impressive match thus far from both of our players here. It's no wonder they are both playing for a spot in the VML Season 9 playoffs here in week number 7. So again, we are going to take a look here. This is, I believe, Josh's sideboard, and just going to say, you know what? That's fine. We're going to run it back. So not too many
Sometimes
choices
you
there,
feel pretty good about what you did.
right? And it's like, it's not like Thalia's coming in, so might as well just leave everything how it was. And we see Josh looking pretty happy with their opener. I'm going to keep that double Fable the Mirror Breaker, double lands, Ratadrabik, Hajar, and an Elastil Core. Noor taking a little longer with her hand. Any
Mhm.
thoughts on this opener, Emma?
It's a little slow, in my opinion. Glissa shouldered. Oh, now we've already lost it into Ow. So I don't blame her for the mulligan here. I think Rafine is such a key part of this matchup too. Not seeing Rafine in your opening hand is a little worrisome. This is also, we don't have a play until turn 3, but I think Rafine is just a better keep.
Yeah, and we see the first draw as is cut down. So having some early action now, but unfortunately does not take care of the 3/3 on Josh's side. Feels pretty bad. A second Rafine will be Noor's draw for turn. Oh boy, is Noor already falling behind here? What do you think, Beky?
Yeah, I think staring at a cut down in your hand when your opponent has something like a jar feels really bad. I have to imagine that the reason it came in is like one of the things that we first lost to was something like this is Illis Elcor and saying that, all right, I want to get rid of those and I need to get rid of the Fable the Mirror Breaker tokens and just working along things in that way. The Hajar, though, is going to protect the Illis Elcor, so potentially not wrong of Noor to have been really aggressive to try to get rid of it because clearly it is something that Josh values.
Yes, and we see that happening. Ella's going to get into the red zone. Rafine not going to block as the LSL core has Death Touch. Rafine going to get rid of a copy of itself, conniving that away, and going to move up to a 2/5. Go for the throat. Going to take care of that LSL core, and we know that Josh does not yet have a 4th land. But before I say that, they're going to draw their 4th land, so able to play out a Fable of the Mirror Breaker or a Ratadrabik or the Mondrak. And it looks like they are going with the latter here. Going to cast that Mondrak, get one of those combo pieces out onto the battlefield in the face of Thalia and a 2/5 Rafine. And Malira gonna follow things up here. And it doesn't look like combo is in sight for Noor at the moment, but this is just a solid beatdown plan. Any
Ooh.
thoughts on what? Oh, we see thinking about discarding that owl. What do you think, Emma?
I think we were really relying on not drawing 2 lands because now our Thalia, I guess we have the Otawara, so that's fine. Just kidding. They're one step ahead of me, absolutely. I was a little surprised to pitch the lands instead of keeping the 5th land for Al next turn, just in terms of curve. But and considering we still haven't drawn the 5th land for Al, but I think we're keeping pretty good pace against Josh right now in terms of aggression.
Ooh, and just getting in the red zone. This is definitely some aggression here from the side of Noor. We see Rafine, Thalia, and Malira all getting in, going to connive on the Rafine, drawing in an Aganjo, which is beautiful against this owl, and then a Disdainful Stroke as well, which is pretty good against most of Josh's deck, as well as being pretty good against most of Noor's deck as well. We'll see the owl hit the bin and going to keep that Disdainful Stroke and the Aganjo both in hand. That Aganjo being super cheap, only costing a single white and able to hold up Disdainful Stroke at the same time. So Owl will
With
jump
Connive,
in. Yeah, it's
ahead.
pretty good. Oh, no,
With
please go ahead.
Connive, you have to play, you're sort of making decisions on the fly really fast too, as you're drawing tons of new cards and discarding. Your game plan is just changing really rapidly, which is something I admire these players for being able to make these decisions. Because, last turn I was really obsessed with how they're going to get the owl in play, and now it's almost just like the owl is no longer relevant in the state of the game.
Yes, and once again, Josh back up against the wall needs to find an answer to that flyer that Rafine having flying just it has been the biggest part of this matchup, the biggest downfall for Josh, as Disdainful Stroke going to take care of the Ratadrabik, and Josh going to say, I have no way out. So Noor is going to take down this matchup 2-1 on their 4-color Legends deck over the Ratadrabik combo 4-color Legends deck. A good game to both of our players. Well played. That was super entertaining. I like these outside of the box decks.
I know, and I was actually very surprised when we saw Noor go ahead and bring in 2 copies of Thalia to be on the play. I was like, okay, interesting, because we've already talked about how it isn't really slowing down anything in the 4-color Legends deck, so we're pretty much just bringing it in as an aggressive tool, and then actually being able to win with that aggression was actually very impressive, and not even a facet that I would have expected this deck to run on. So very impressed from honestly both of these players and watching all 3 of those games.
Yes, knowing and understanding the matchup, it was definitely impressive play from both sides. But that in the end, Noor takes it down and it moves on to 5-2. Josh moves down to 5-2. So we'll have to see their breakers kind of work out there in Division 11. We'll see if Josh can still make the playoffs. But we are on to our last match of the evening now. Can you believe that? It's gone by so quickly. We are going to watch our last 2 competitors vying for that playoff spot here in Season 9. We've got Dafta to kick things off. Jund mid-range. Now, this deck's not fooling around saying I'm playing like, some treasures and trying to like cast tracks and things like that. This deck is just like Unleash the Inferno, which I think it might be one of the more underplayed but powerful cards in the format. A lot of times it is just a 2-for-1. We see copies of powerful cards that have made their mark on standard, like Shieldred, Braid, and obviously the full set of Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Do you have any thoughts on this list, Emma?
I was thinking so much about this matchup as an interesting matchup that I haven't put a ton of thought into this specific list. The Capricious Hellraiser is a little bit unusual. I don't know a whole lot about Jund. I'm so used to looking at Grixis that I might not be the expert on what Jund is doing right now in Standard. Maybe I'll pass it to Beky. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so we've already been talking about the importance of Fable the Mirror Breaker being like bar none the best thing you can be doing. So I really like moving towards kind of a Jund package and playing Unleash the Inferno over something like Corpse Appraiser. But you're still getting to play kind of the silent other best card in the format, being Blood Tithe Harvester, that a lot of decks have kind of bent over backwards to play. Like even a lot of the mono red decks have moved into Rakdos just so that they can play like Kumano into Blood Tithe Harvester. All of a sudden you got a 2-mana 4/3 on turn 2 and you're going crazy. So I actually kind of like this move into Jund. You're also giving yourself the Elder Dragon War, which seems a little bit kind of maybe nondescript at the start, but it is basically a 4-mana 4/4 on a lot of areas. It's 4-mana 4/4 with flying, and we got to see in that last matchup that we just watched, sure, it was like 2 completely different decks, but flying is kind of a very important part of this metagame and kind of one of the reasons that white has also been as good as it has been.
Definitely the difference between, now that I'm looking at it more here in Grixis is some of the aggressive creatures and that saga that Beky was just mentioning. Grixis takes the counter spells, and I guess Jund is going to take the aggression on the top end as an answer.
Yes, as we see, this list also has 3 copies, as Emma had mentioned, of Capricious Hellraiser, which is a 3 red 4/4 flying. It costs 3 less to cast if you have 9 or more cards in your graveyard. So it is supposed to be a red for a 4/4 flyer. So, having things like that, it's definitely a being able to get in the air and hoping that your opponent doesn't have an answer, for sure. Let's take a look at our opponent's deck here. We have Randomchild on. Very straightforward. Mono red aggro. Nice clean way to end the night. So not too many like cards that I have not seen in Standard before going on here. We got Shivan Devastators. We've got Bloodthirsty Adversary, Monastery Swiftspear, Phoenix Chick, Kumano vs. Kakasan, Lightning Strikes. 2 mana upstairs, take 3, things like that. So very straightforward, aggressive. Now, although I feel like you have to be a very brave person to bring mono red to the table in a standard format that children is legal. That just scares me so much. What do you think about this mono aggro deck and how it's positioned in this matchup? What do you think, Becky?
Ooh, I would be very interested mostly in seeing how these Furnish Punishers are going to play out. I think that that is going to be a pretty big portion of this matchup, and I've actually just been really excited to see Furnace Punisher in general become a part of red decks, as everyone is playing a ton of non-basic lands. And I think pairing that alongside just like a lot of this removal, a creature with menace is actually going to be able to edge in a lot of extra damage. And so I think this deck certainly has legs, but there are also a lot of removal pieces between Cut Down, Abrade, and Go for the Throat on the other side of the board that maybe we just won't be able to get any of these creatures to stick. And I've been playing a lot of Modern right now as well, and kind of one of the classic things about Burn that I always feel is if a Burn player doesn't start off with either the Monastery Swift Spear or the Goblin Guide, like the game feels so much better when they don't have that start of a reliant creature to do those last few bits of damage early in the game.
Yeah, the repeating damage, those you're like, no one drop. Yes, this is the best day
Yeah,
ever.
exactly. Especially like I mostly play Tron, and so anytime my Burn opponent like doesn't start off with Swift Spear or Goblin Guide, I'm just like, "Whew, all right, dodged a bullet. I can do this."
Yes, absolutely. Now, as we head into our final match of the day, Emma, do you have any thoughts about this matchup?
I believe that the fact that Jund is only running 2 shouldered and none in the side is definitely a positive for mono red, but we want to see mono red win before turn 5 reliably, which doesn't sound like a terrible ask for a mono red deck. So we just want to see that fast damage come out of them.
Yes, we will see as Dafta plays out a tap land and says go with some removal in hand. Cut down a Braid and Elder Dragon War. Besides being able to be kind of like a mini Wrath, it also does make that 4/4 for with flying, as Becky had mentioned earlier. We see Kumano faces Kakazan on the side of Randomchild. So probably relieved to not see that come after a Swift Spear or something along those lines, as Phoenix Chick will come down here on turn number 2. But before it can attack, Cut Down going to take care of that. No, perhaps. Do you think it's worth deploying that against this little 2/2? What do you think, Becky?
1 damage is less than 2. I probably would do it. Especially, I don't know. I guess with Kamano faces Kakazan moving off of this second chapter, things are likely going to stay within cut down range. But I usually like to deploy my cut downs really early to just make sure that they're going to be able to hit a lot of early things and not get blocked by 3/3s that come later in the game.
Now it looks like Dafta ready to play out his Fable of the Mirror Breaker to make that pesky little 2/2. Will it live long? It does not look like it, as Play with Fire going to take care of that. So Kumano faces Kakazan, going to flip over here and going to have a clear pathway to attack, as well as a Bloodthirsty Adversary and a Mishra's Foundry also being played. So some pressure now on the side of Randomchild as Fable of the Mirror Breaker ticks up to chapter number 2. We'll see at least one Riveter's Charm looking like it's going to the bin. The question is keeping or getting rid of that tap land, and it looks like happy just to discard and draw 1. So Kenson is going to be the draw here. And will it be played out? It is played out as a land, and we will see Elder Dragon War and going to start at chapter number 1. So dealing 2 damage to each of those creatures takes care of Randomchild's board. We have both players with 3 cards in hand, but this Mistress Foundry is going to start chipping away at Dafta's life total at 15 down to 13. And an Invoke Despair is the draw here, but Elder Dragon War are going to allow for some extra drawing, going to be able to curate Dafta's hand as Reflection of Kiki-Jiki is here. Is this game getting out of Randomchild's hand, Emma?
I think so. That board wipe, semi board wipe from Elder Dragon War is pretty brutal against mono red, or on turn 5, which is the point by which I said mono red needs to probably be in the winning seat. And Dafta's still at 13 life, with Randomchild only having 2 cards in hand. So I think we're getting a little bit out of range for the mono red deck.
Yeah, we see Sokan's in from the side of Randomchild. So going to put some hasty 1/1s out on the battlefield. Still a cut down in Dafta's hand, as well as a Riveteer's Charm, whether or not it's worth it to cast at the moment. Randomchild with only 1 card left in hand, though. Even with that Mishra's Foundry on the battlefield, it looks like they are a little bit behind here, even though the life totals tell a different story. Randomchild at 18. Dafta, if allowing these attacks to go through, would drop down to 11, but it looks like Cutdown's going to take care of one of the 1/1, so just going to take 1 here. And on Dafta's side, do you think it's worth it to just cast this Invoke Despair, Beky?
I don't. Oh, we do have the mana. Okay. I was confused because earlier I thought that they were not black tri-lands, but they are. So yeah, I figure why not? Like, we also get to draw ourselves some cards, and we're at the point where we're growing lower on cards in our hand. So saying, yeah, let's try and refresh while our opponent only has 1 card in hand, and just try to, if I'm not winning the life total race or I'm trying to turn this corner, cards in hand is going to be a big part of that.
Yes, and we see Blood Tithe Harvester and double Unleash the Inferno here in Dafta's hand. Does this mean you're comfortable enough to attack with this 4/4, Emma?
Oh, absolutely. I would be pretty confident in my game right now, just because of the lack of card draw on mono red side. Plus, fantastic. You have a handful of useful items. I think you start sending it.
Yeah, we'll see Lightning Strike to take care of that Blood Tithe Harvester, but that means Randomchild, no cards in hand for now until they draw for turn. Kumano is going to tick on up to Chapter 2, but no creature to take advantage of that. Mishra's Foundry going to come alive, be a 2/2, and get quickly taken care of by that Unleash the Inferno, which is not only going to take care of that, it is also going to take care of the Kumano Faces Kakazan. And Randomchild said there is no coming back from this. Let's move on to game number 2. So we'll take a look at Dafta's sideboard here. And it looks like those Graveyard Trespassers could not come in fast enough. Any thoughts on the sideboard, Beky?
I was gonna say, I feel like we're already pretty favored in this matchup, but despite that, I mean, it just seems like Dafta came extremely prepared for this matchup very quickly, getting rid of Reckoner Bankbusters and the License Hearst. Those aren't going to do very much. Let's go ahead and get a little bit more early interaction in the form of those Anoint with Afflictions and those Great Bodies that also gain a little bit of life in Graveyard Trespasser. So I'm a big fan of what we're doing so far with these changes and just making sure that our curve is low and we're always going to be able to interact.
Yes, we'll see if there are any further choices to make. It looks like the more expensive cards, the Capricious Hellraiser, that may cost more, at least our more late game threats seem to be coming out. Interested in the cards like that Unleash the Inferno, and yes, a plethora of removal. Looks like maybe 1 Hellraiser and 1 Invoke Despair coming in, but we're looking at 62 right now. Any thoughts on these last cuts, Emma?
I see them debating the expensive mana cost cards. I mean, I understand being low to the ground for this matchup. It makes a lot of sense, but sometimes, you second guess if you have enough finishers to wind down the game. But Dafta seems confident, and I also feel confident that with what they have, even without those high-end finishers, they can close out the game.
All right, we see double Blood Tithe Harvester, Shieldred, the opener on the side of Dafta, but no other real interaction. Any thoughts on this opener from Dafta, Beky?
I'm a pretty big fan. I think I would be a little bit scared that we don't have any instant speed interaction. Like, we're likely just playing these Blood Tithe Harvesters out to get taken down. But I also don't think that that's really a horrible thing. The only thing that maybe makes that horrible is the fact that we're on the draw.
We see a Tapland too from Dafta as Bloodthirsty Adversary going to kick off this damage parade coming across for 3. Dafta down to 16. So that Bloodthirsty Adversary 3/3 off of the second chapter of Kumano. We'll see Blood Tithe Harvester starting things off on Dafta's side of the board. Will there be a piece of removal for the Harvester? we are about to find out as Etchings of Kumano flips a third land from Randomchild and just going to get into the red zone, allowing the blocks to happen on Dafta's side. Bloodthirsty Adversary going to trade with the Blood Tithe Harvester, and we'll see Fable of the Mirror Breaker from our mono red opponent. So passing the turn back, and now double Shieldred in hand, Blood Tithe Harvester, and an Anoint with Affliction, I believe, was the draw there. Seems like a pretty good a good draw. Now, do you play out the second Blood Tithe Harvester, or do you just go with some solid removal and being afraid that your Blood Tithe Harvester is going to be removed again? What do you think, Emma?
I think functionally, because they didn't remove the first Blood Tithe Harvester, unless the one card they drew was removal, I would expect they are probably not holding any instant speed removal unless they just really wanted to play the Fable, which I don't blame them for. It's a very powerful card. I would almost go with the Anoint the Affliction here, because likely you're just going to trade your Blood Type Harvester away again as a blocker. But I'm down to be proven wrong.
Yes, and considering what to play, it looks like Tapland makes sense here. No 1-drops from Dafta's side. Thinking about maybe playing an untapped land to be able to loot away a card with those blood tokens that are now in play. Double blood tokens on the side of Dafta. We'll see Rebel Salvo hitting the bin on the side of Randomchild, and Thundering Raiju going to get in here. And this is an attack for a lot of damage. We see Thundering Raiju going to be a 4/4. That Goblin Shaman and the Etchings are another 4 damage. This is 8 damage total. Dafta at 14. This is more than half of his life total. Any thoughts on blocks here, Beky?
I would be pretty interested in kind of just what Emma was saying. You're wanting to get rid of some of those smaller creatures. Unfortunately, this Anoint with Affliction is never likely going to get rid of the Thundering Raiju. I don't think we have a way to make our opponent corrupted, though I would love to see it happen somehow. And unfortunately, this Thundering Raiju likely going to trade away with our Shieldred on the next turn. So I think that going to a low life total here is a little bit spooky. I probably would have aggressively traded and just continued to save and preserve life total. But here we are, our Blood Tithe Harvester still alive. And yeah, okay, getting rid of the Thundering Raiju with the blood token and that activation actually makes a lot of sense. So I was so focused on playing the Shieldred that I kind of wasn't really thinking about that, admittedly. And I guess I was also thinking we have 2 Shieldreds in hand, and so aggressively trading one away is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, it's still somewhat terrifying because you did watch Randomchild discard a Rebel Salvo, which is one of the 8 ways to answer a Shieldred. So definitely a scary place to be. And Dafta just going to say, I can't even afford to play out these Shieldreds right now. Going to hold up both Abrade and Anoint with Affliction. What do you think about that play, Emma?
I think at this point we're in a reasonable spot. Had we not been able to get rid of the Thundering Raiju, it would have probably been slammed the Shieldred. But now holding the 2 pieces of removal, try to get Randomchild down to almost no cards in hand, and then play your Shieldred to sort of regain the advantage makes sense to me. I'm just not sure we're going to have enough life to get us there.
And oh my, this is a lot of power on the battlefield. Randomchild going real wide, only 1 card left in hand. The Mishra's Foundry is in that land pile as well for turns after this one. We'll see the Abrade taking care of the Kumano, and the Anoint with Affliction going to exile that Goblin Shaman, but still going to take 3, half of Dafta's life total, and just drawing a tap land here. So Shieldred has work cut out for her here, as we see Takanuma coming down, going to blood away that tap land, going to gain 2 and go up to 5, drawing in a Braid, which is great in this matchup, but is it going to be enough?
It depends so
Yeah.
strongly on what's in hand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, depends on the prowess triggers and Rebel Salvo going ahead and saying, we didn't even need prowess triggers.
Yes, we see Rebel Salvo taking care of that Shieldred, and Randomchild taking care of Dafta here in game number 2. So once again, we move on to a game number 3.
Wow.
None of these players going quietly into the night tonight. Everybody's fighting for that playoff spot, making them earn it. And as it should be, as we see Dafta's opening hand here, game number 3, everything's on the line. Haunted Ridge, Sokenzin, a cut down, double Blood Tithe Harvester, Unleash the Inferno, Elder Dragon War, 2 lands, but some play to it. What do you think, Becky?
I was gonna ask Emma. We've both agreed that we're kind of greedy players. I would probably keep it. How do you
I
feel?
keep it
Okay.
100%. Yes. 100.
Okay,
Dafta's
cool.
in the same wavelength too.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'm just thinking, like, I don't know, the Blood Tithe Harvester bloods can get rid of some of the mopier pieces, and if we can get to casting Elder Dragon War, like, that's gonna be able to clean up a whole lot of things on Randomchild's side of the board, especially when we're not starting off with Kumano faces Kakazan. We're not having to worry about like a potential 3/3 coming into play that doesn't fall to the Elder Dragon War. I think that this is a pretty solid keep, and you know, we're talking about our players don't want to go quietly into the night. The draws that our players have don't want to go quietly either, because they've all been pretty great.
Yes, they have. As we see Black Cleave Cliffs, the draw from Dafta's side, deciding here perhaps whether it is prudent to just play out this Blood Tithe Harvester or to hold up like a cut down to take care of this Monastery Swift Spirit for any shenanigans that Randomchild has here on turn 2. But it looks like the only shenanigans are this bloodthirsty adversary going to get into the red zone, offering up the trade. We'll have to take it, and it looks like the answer is yes, going to preserve that life total, staying up at 19. Another Black Cleave Cliffs, the draw here on Dafta's side. So able to double spell here, Blood Tithe Harvester, as well as a cut down. The question is, do you cast it now? And it looks like Dafta is going to wait. Any thoughts on not doing it on Dafta's turn, Emma?
I think you wait for prowess before you make the decision on how you want to use the removal. It doesn't look like we're getting prowess triggers here anyway, so the Felder, the other guy, Felden,
Yes,
is clearly the better option. I think if Randomchild was holding some things at instant speed, they would be playing different, and I think Dafta's making a smart decision.
For sure, because Felden's something you definitely don't want to use damage-based removal on, so that cut down lined up perfectly as Zytor's Proving Ground is going to be played out on the side of Dafta, deciding to hold on to that Sokenzin and perhaps have the option of channeling it later. Unleash the Inferno and Elder Dragon War also both in hand for Dafta, as we see Shivan Devastator here for the first time in this matchup is a one of in the deck of Randomchild. He is going to get across for 3 damage and just going to keep pushing out of cut down range, which is the draw here on Dafta's side.
It's still in Blood Tithe Harvester range, though, so I think we're in a fine spot with the other cut down. I think we just make a decision on if we're going to start taking our saga or just keep removing. But I think against mono red, you always just keep removing, you keep trading, you keep removing until they run out of cards, and then you start rolling out your advantage.
Yes, as we see Randomchild left with 2 cards in hand. This poor Monastery Swift Spear, I think it only got to attack once. This poor, you feel so good. You start off, you got your, right? The very lonely Monastery Swift Spear. And again, Dafta just holding up, has so many options here. Can play out the Elder Dragon War and get things going on there, to be able to also in chapter 2 loot away some of the hand that he might not like. It looks like Sokenzin will come down as a land, so going to keep open the option to cut down. And Elder Dragon War will start on chapter number 1 just to take care of that Monastery Swift Spear. Again, 2 cards left in hand. Well, 3 cards now left in Randomchild's hand. 2 cards once again. And Monastery Swift Spear is back once again. And Mishra's Foundry being activated. So Dafta looks like happy to move to cut down this Mishra's Foundry. So both stone rating Randomchild and only letting him get in for 1 damage. Dafta to 15. Dafta's at a pretty healthy life total. How do you feel if you were a Randomchild right now, Emma?
We've reached the turn 5 crucial point by which I feel mono red needs to be firmly winning. Just a lack of card draw in red makes it really hard to recover from this point. And now the Graveyard Trespasser in play. The Rebel Salvo here is pretty nice, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough.
Yeah, and we see Randomchild needing to discard another copy of Sukanzan in order for that Rebel Salvo to not be countered by the ward on Graveyard Trespasser. But Monastery Swiftspear did get pumped up from the prowess, so up to a 2-3. But now Dafta has a 4-4, and Randomchild, he's empty-handed. So definitely a scary place to be. Dafta going to do a little bit of digging, find an Anoint with Affliction, and that might just do it here for us. Any thoughts about being able to claw back into this game as a mono-red player, Beky?
No, at this point I would be kind of crying. The things that I would be looking for, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, a way to get myself a 4/4 dragon that doesn't exist. Unfortunately, just I'm with Emma. It's a little bit too late, and I believe that Randomchild also had on his player slide that this matchup felt pretty play draw dependent, and it has kind of played out that way. The games where Dafta has gone first, it's been kind of just, it feels very one-sided for Dafta, and then Randomchild got to play first in the last game and kind of just took it all down, still had 20 life at the end of it, so it's kind of really falling to that one crucial piece.
Interestingly, I kind of feel like this Jund list is in an even better position against mono red than Grixis, just because of the way it's playing. And I think mono red has a better shot against Grixis, but I believe Grixis is slightly favored, and this seems even more favored in the matchup. Not that I don't love a mono red list, and I think in the meta right now, there's definitely opportunity for something like mono red to thrive. This is just not the matchup that he probably wanted to see.
Yeah, I guess we see this Rebel Salvo will be flashed back by the Bloodthirsty Adversary, so that will take care of the 4/4 dragon. Monastery Swiftspear are going to get in for 2. Unleash the Inferno can take care of that at any time. Dafta deciding to cycle the Zytor's Proving Ground, drawing a cut down, going to once again loot with the remaining blood token on the battlefield. Oh, there she is. Mommy's home.
Where's Rebel Salvo number 3?
Yes.
I was going to say Dafta wasn't drawing very great, which is maybe potential for mono red to eke its way back in, but nah, Sholdred is kind of the thing you absolutely don't want to see.
Yes, and we see Unleash the Inferno going to take care of one of the creatures, presumably to take care of that Fable of the Mirror Breaker itself as well. We'll see what Dafta, he's going to decide between the 2/2 Goblin and the 1/2 Monastery Swiftspear. At this time, it seems to be 6 one way, half dozen the other. Now, the question is, for the non-Shieldred attackers, do you attack with Shieldred here?
Oh, here I attack with Shieldred.
Shieldred, get in.
Our opponent has no cards in hand. Normally, my concern is Wandering Emperor, and not a concern here.
Yes, as we see it, Shieldred is going to finish things off here. Dafta, an impressive showing from our Jund Midrange deck. Kind of the color combination that has been forgotten shouldn't be so swept under the rug. Jund Midrange in the hands of Dafta, going to take that one down against Randomchild, mono red aggro, 2-1. So Dafta moves up to 5-2, and Randomchild moves down to 5-2. So again, some interesting tiebreakers going on there in division number 12, but good games to both of our players. And congrats to Dafta on the victory. And that's actually it for us for tonight. I need more game 3s in my life.
Oh, we got a lot of game 3s. They made me feel alive again.
They did they not?
Yeah.
They were sort of wonderful, as were both of my phenomenal co-commentators tonight. Beky, it has been a pleasure to be back in the booth with you. And Emma, it was wonderful working with you why don't we remind everybody at home where they can find each of you on the interwebs, Beky?
Right, yeah. Kind of the same as I imagine what Emma is going to say. I'm Beky Bear on everything that I want to be found on. So you can go ahead, find me, Beky Bear, Beky spelled without a C, that me.
That's wonderful. And Emma,
same thing for me.
Yeah,
I'm Emmaskyeward on everything, and I really just liked that when you said that thanks to both of your co-casters, Beky and I did the exact same thing.
I was gonna say that too. I was like, we're the same wavelength. We're just like, oh.
Anyway,
I did it too. You just couldn't see me.
Good. I love
That's
it.
perfect. As it
I'm
should
going
be.
to have to keep people. I didn't. I was off. I was not in that.
Okay.
Wait, all of us
I was out of the
together.
loop. Everybody
Introducing, so
together.
that's okay. But no, and thanks to Nicole for being a fabulous lead on our broadcasting tonight. I really appreciate you.
Always
has
amazing.
Been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you very much to our sponsors, Wizards of the Coast and GLHF. Good luck, high five, Megan and Maria. Again, you should check them out. If you don't follow them on Twitter, check out their podcast. They are phenomenal. Wizards is wonderful. They've made this season of the VML possible, providing the invites for the next pro tours and things like that. So they're the best. We love them. A big thanks to our admin team working behind the scenes, our whole team of casters that we have, all of our players for playing tonight and putting it all on the line for us, giving some exciting games to cover. Our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And as always, the biggest thank you goes my heart. I adore her. I don't know how we would function without her. Phoebe, the most wonderful producer on the planet, not close, bar none. I adore her, and she can never go anywhere ever because it just would not be the VML without her. So we love you, Phoebe, and we love you all. See you all next week for our first week of VML playoffs. Top 32 starts next week on the channel. Make sure you're following VML MTG here on Twitch and Twitter. See, we're all just the same everywhere. I'm just Lady the Crease everywhere, Beky Bell everywhere, Emmaskyeward everywhere. It would just, because if it gets complicated, if I'm like, oh, does this one have like the numbers on it? I would never, but we make it nice and easy. So we expect you to be here 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. See you all next week.